Welcome to Retro Fanfic Retrospective, the podcast where we dredge up old fanfiction and expose it to the cold, harsh light of 2019.
Oh.
Yes, I had to change the opening. This is going to be our first episode in the new year.
Wait, but it's 2018 now.
Yes.
What are you talking about? I mean, obviously, this release date is January something, so it's 2019.
Are we in the future?
Technically.
Do we have to go back to the... No, never mind.
That was last
That was last episode.
Yeah. You're breaking the illusion that we record live, which is what everybody assumes, I'm sure.
That's what I assumed.
Every podcast just piped directly live into your ears every time. People are just waiting around, waiting for you to hit that play button.
It's a full-time job.
Yeah.
In any case, my name is Amato, and with me are...
Tori.
And Dom.
And we've got another special guest tonight.
Ooh.
Hi, I'm Daisy. Sorry, it's Taran. Hi.
The often mentioned Taran.
Yes, at least occasionally mentioned.
That's true. Our listeners, I guess, have been introduced to the concept of Taran.
Yeah, our listeners who definitely listen to every episode in order. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thus I feed.
Yeah.
And let me get this out of the way to begin with. Our fanfic this week is Pokemon Master by Ace Sanchez, AC on fanfiction.net. The link to it is bit.ly/rfrmaster. We'll talk about that link a little bit more in a moment. But this is a fanfic that I wanted to do because it was very well known at the time, and I was waiting to do it until we could have Taran here to do it with us.
Yay.
I wanted you with us specifically.
It's sort of, it's not my baby, but it's the inspiration for a 14-year-old's baby. I'll have to explain that later. Never
Yeah,
mind.
let's rephrase that a little bit later.
We can rephrase that.
Please.
Maybe we could have Taran introduce, his qualifications.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're
Yeah,
talking
Taran,
about said fanfiction.
What's your relation to Pokemon and/or fanfiction?
Well, let's see. I kind of dived into Pokemon straight out of OPB. That's Oregon Public Broadcasting. So my parents allowed us to watch the WB, which had this new thing called anime, but it was specifically Pokemon and I think Monster Rancher, which might have been a thing. I don't know.
Great show. I loved that show.
I
People
think
liked
that's
it.
contemporary, yeah.
But yeah, they kind of led up in my preteens, and then I got to watch something that I thought was super cool called Pokemon. Let's see. I was obsessed with it, I think. First, I was obsessed with the Japanese playing cards because I don't know if we went to a Wajimaya, which is a Japanese store, and that's what they had. I don't know if there were English cards at the time, but I got this Flareon. It was super sweet. Then we started watching the show, and eventually I started to make my own fan fiction based on the show after I found out randomly in an early Google search that you could make fiction based on other things. So I was sort of copycatting a bunch of fan fiction at that time. I think I wrote 140 pages of fan fiction.
Wow.
I don't know what, font or size of font.
How many bits is that?
I don't know.
I usually go by word count, honestly.
How many Pikachus is that?
One really badass one, I think.
But yeah, and this particular fanfic that we're going to discuss was probably the major impetus for me to start my fan fiction journey, which lasted like a year.
And
But you were highly productive during that year.
yeah.
Yeah, totally. And I was a big Ash and Misty shipper.
Yeah, weren't we all?
Yeah.
No.
Really?
I was a Bulbasaur, period. That was
You
it.
were just a Bulbasaur.
I was a Bulbasaur, yeah.
That's fair. I think I was a Squirtle. Might still be.
I just pulled it up, Taran, and all that fanfiction.net says is that it's over 100,000 words.
Wait, what is?
Your fanfic.
Oh.
Wait, so question.
I don't know why it's not exact. Usually fanfiction.net gives me an exact number.
No, but better question.
Yes.
Why are we not reading Taran's fanfiction?
I have been cruel enough to Taran's fanfiction because when I found out about it, like a little jerk teenager, that's what I chose to start off my MSTing career, which I've also mentioned a few times. I wrote MSTings of anime-based fanfics, and I did Taran's, even though really it didn't deserve it.
No.
It was
Wow.
super hilarious, though.
Harsh.
I think at that
No,
point,
no. Wait, I'm saying it didn't deserve it because it wasn't bad.
Oh, I see.
It didn't deserve that ridicule.
it
There
was
was still level
terrible.
ridicule.
Not that
Okay.
it didn't deserve attention.
I see. I understand now.
Yes, your fanfic was considerably long and
think they-
relatively popular.
I think it was unfinished, wasn't it?
I think.
yeah.
It was unfinished.
Very unfinished.
I think it was only the biggest one I put on there. I also did a couple of song fics and other things, but I doubt they were preserved by whoever keeps uploading my fic. Maybe it's just the one time. I don't
It's
know.
just the one time. The one person who re-uploaded your fanfic just still has it up on fanfiction.net. And it's up to you, Taran, whether you want to name names of fanfiction here. We're not
yeah.
going to pressure you. Oh, yeah?
What Legends Are Made Of,
Yes.
which I thought was a cool title, I think, because at the time I imagined Misty smacking things with a mallet, and the acronym is WLAMO. So
Yes.
I was expecting
Wow.
to have Misty smack a lot of things with mallets, I guess.
That's very layered. Because I was
Yeah.
gonna say what Legends Are Made Of just sounds like a decent Pokemon title. Like,
Well, I do stand by my mockery of the title, actually, because
I mean, it's
looking
pretty
at...
silly, but
No, you just don't know the whole story, Tori.
Oh, okay.
It's not called What Legends Are Made Of.
Oh,
It's called
subtitles.
Alternate Reality Story 1, What Legends Are Made Of, Saga 1, The Legend Begins. Chapter 1 is where it all began.
oh, that's a great title. That's not at all long or convoluted or redundant.
If
Very
you're-
nice to young me.
In fact, Taran, I'm gonna ask you for the rights to that title for a first published novel.
It's a good title because, like, if you ever want to know where it began, or where it began, or where it began, then you've got it covered.
And if you want to
Especially
write more alternate
How the
reality
legends
stories...
were made.
Yeah, which legends and how.
And the beginning of those legends.
It's like that segment of Mr. Rogers where they show you how, like, saxophones were made. This is how the legends are made.
I'm
This was going to be a quick saga, apparently.
sorry, I'm really not here to make fun of your fanfic, Taran. I'm here to make fun of Ace Sanchez's. So we can get off
Let's
of this
do that.
topic.
We can totally do a follow-up if my fanfic is popular enough.
I mean, it was. It got like 84 faves is pretty decent. That was the re-upload too. It wasn't even the original one.
So you read it when you were like 13?
Yeah.
But either way, I think it's fair to do this one first because it feels like this one inspired yours.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
this writer also sounds like they might be 13, so.
Yeah, well, actually, before we jump into the content itself, about 8 years after he finished writing it, the author did post kind of a like commentary and FAQ, and it's not all very illuminating, but the age was 17 or 18.
Oh,
going
really?
going through uni, he says, with no income, so must have been in college a little bit early. Had lots of free time, no idea what to do with their life, they said. And I found myself with lots of free time, and being an anime fan who also liked reading and not having much access to anime, I thought I would join the FFML, the fanfiction mailing list, which is another of those
Yeah.
big communities that I felt like I was forgetting it, other than Rec
Fanfiction,
Arts Anime
FML.
Creative. Yeah, FFML.
Yeah.
He decided he would join it and make up my own content. The rest, as they say, is history. And just to throw this out there, he immediately follows up by saying it was also a dark part of his life. His little brother was diagnosed with leukemia and, recovered initially, and then it came back and, they died. And
Oh, wow.
so that's a little bit of background, but he doesn't connect it in his comments to the content of the fanfic. He connects it to going through this, it made me realize that life is a fickle thing and one should not waste their time with worries about whether you should do this or that. Just think to yourself, what is the worst that can happen? Will you regret not trying? Just do it.
Yeah.
And if I can say, a favorable thing going into this, it's definitely the work of someone who is having fun doing what they're doing and not
definitely.
worrying about
Yeah.
the critics or
Yeah.
whether they should be doing it.
It's also like a very good point about a lot of people that want to be creators. Like people that want to be creators and are especially kind of, I don't want to say intelligent, but maybe insightful are also really good critics. So they'll be very harsh on their own works because they'll make something and they'll see it as a critic and see it for the low quality that it is. But the thing is, you can't get better at something until you turn out some lower quality shit.
We're all our own worst critic, too. I think it's really hard to see your own stuff as being good as well. So I do always have admiration for people who are willing to just put this out there, especially since it seems like for this author, he was going... I don't know.
I
were
think
going
so,
through,
but we can go with
Let's
they.
go with they. They were going through, something very dark and exploring, it seems like, a lot of topics of death, which was prevalent in their life. So, despite a lot of stuff in this, you can give them props for that.
Yes.
Yeah, I imagine that at least me, if I had known that like a lot of people would read my fanfic, I never would have posted it. Like, the idea is like to appeal to a very specific community, or at least it was back then. I don't know what it's like now.
Pokemon fanfic community? I don't know either.
I imagine it's like podcasting. You put it out there and don't imagine anybody's going to listen to it.
Yeah, and you're always a little bit embarrassed when you realize someone actually did listen to you. And
Yeah.
see what you wrote.
Where you're heard in front of like tens of people.
Yeah, I know. When we get fan emails and it's like, oh, you're a real person and you listened to what I said. I don't know how I feel about that.
Seems rude, kind of.
I know. Like, what are they doing? Get off the internet. Go play with your kids.
Relatedly, it is nice as a change of pace to actually have someone who's a fanfic author.
Yeah.
Or was. Unlike the rest of us who, like, we really can't
Yeah.
say it.
I mean, Amato, you just mainly criticized fan
I
fiction.
did. And I mean, there was fan fiction involved as well in terms of my crappy characterizations of the characters and such. But, like, basically I was just sitting back being smug and ridiculing other people, which is not the same deal as, like, putting yourself out there.
No, yeah, I think we've already accepted the fact that these fanfiction authors have way more emotional vulnerability than you could ever have.
Yeah. I've accepted my inferiority. Now, to go into the fanfic itself, I like to start from Square Zero, which is the website. Our link points you to a Wayback Machine copy of the original website, and I think even though most of it is posted on fanfiction.net, you've got to go to the website. That's part of the experience.
I'm going to be honest with you. This website, like, look at it. It's for the like a late '90s website. It kind of looks amazing. Like,
I remember
so
it looked
classic.
very cool.
I mean, it's got quizzes on the bottom or like polls.
No, this takes me back to like the best websites, like back when the idea of a website was enchanting. Like I used to go to the Sailor Moon website all the time that was just like you could just get little graphics for your own webpage from it, but like just clicking through the links and like seeing all the sets of images is so amazing at the time.
But also like this specific website doesn't
yeah,
go
like little
overboard with like
badges, yeah.
little animated pixels and stuff.
Yeah.
In fact, there's no animated content
no, it's
here,
very
is there?
clean.
Well, this is a static PDF of the website.
Uh,
But I think the lightning might have moved. I can't remember.
well, so it's black. They've got Pokemon Master up there in a cool, like, archaic-looking font.
Diablo font.
Oh, this is the Diablo font.
Yeah.
Of course it's the Diablo font. With those crosses through the O's.
Crosses through the O's.
There's pictures of Ash and Pikachu, and Ash is Rurouni Kenshin with
And edited, yeah.
edited to have black
Kenshin
hair.
Image. It's just incredible, I
And
just gotta say.
It's pretty great. And each little chapter has its own accompanying image, most of which, like, from episode 4 on, they seem to mostly be, like, pulled from Pokemon. But the first 3 are... the first one is a pitch black Pikachu. The second one, it's definitely Naoko Takeuchi, right?
Yeah.
But I can't identify what picture it is. Is that a barrel? It looks like it must
Oh,
be a
no,
barrel.
no. That's, excuse me, I'm not talking into the mic because I stood up to look at the picture. That is, I believe, a picture of Pluto.
Oh, you may be
But
right.
With
with
different
the
hair?
hair.
Well, you
either-
can't see the bun in the back
the
because
bun,
that's
you
where it's
can
cropped.
Sort of see
Yeah.
it.
Oh, yeah.
I believe it's a picture of Sailor Pluto.
But the hair has been recolored
hair
red,
has
so
been
it's adult
recolored.
Misty.
Mm-hmm.
And the third picture is absolutely Tenji Muyo. What's her name?
Sasami.
Sasami.
Sashimi. Raw fish girl.
But what character is that supposed to be? Is that Duplica?
Yes.
It must be.
That's Duplica, okay.
But that
How-
seems especially bizarre because Duplica in this is heavily sexualized and Sasami is like 10.
I would like
Well,
to,
it is Tenshi Muyo. That doesn't stop you from being sexualized in Tenshi Muyo.
I would like to shout out. It's not on the main page, but the most, at least what struck me at the time, the most famous fan art is by someone named Vaporeon05, and I thought it was just the most awesome picture of a grown-up Misty I could ever imagine, and it turns out it's just Asuka from Evangelion.
Oh my
Click.
god.
Is it one of these?
Yes,
It
the
looks
top
like-
right there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh.
But, well,
okay.
some work was done with the hair.
Some work, yeah.
There's
Yeah.
also an Ava picture. Oh, also by all the ones from Vaporeon05 seem to be edited Ava pictures.
That one might be another Kenshin one there, no? That's
Yeah,
not Ava.
That's not Ava, but the other 3 are.
Anyway,
Listeners,
Yeah,
as you can
let's talk
clearly
about this
see
visual content.
from what we're talking about.
Yes.
Anyway.
All right, so the actual content. Going into this, from the top of the page that this is a dark future of Pokemon, and it's going to be all
Super
Diablo-y.
dark.
And indeed, Chapter 1, we jump right into a village being raided by like horrible marauders from the Pokemon League, and like there's a few things I think it's safe to say we're going to be complaining about in this fanfic. If I'm not overstepping my bounds.
I'm the champion here. I'm on the side of the fanfic right now.
Really? Because in your notes, I can see terrible, terrible.
Hey.
Just saying.
So one of the things is that we start right here on ground zero with the threatened sexual assault.
Yeah.
That's like the first thing that happens.
One
And it's-
of many.
Which is why I thought the writer might be pretty young, because it just seems like they didn't understand
No.
how much that actually means to people.
I mean,
but,
dumb masculine things can
Yeah.
go through any stage of life.
I mean, I guess,
unfortunately.
yeah, well, I guess what I mean is, I guess I can't possibly have the experience of someone who didn't experience that. So, yeah, men.
Well,
Maybe.
in any
it's
case,
just men. Mm.
yeah, we get some description of like rampaging Pokemon, and then like one of the raiders threatens sexual assault on a young woman, and then of course we get the introduction to who's going to be the star of this fanfic, Ashura.
Ashura.
Sure.
I'm pretty sure it's Ashura
Yeah.
because his name's Ash, right?
That's an actual
Yeah.
name, though, I think.
No, of course it is, but
Is it?
I remember there was some sort
It's
of
an
debate
Indian war thing, I think.
yeah,
over whether he was like
Indian deity.
like everyone would have their own full name for him, like Ash or Ashton or Ashura.
And really, it was Satoshi.
Satoshi.
The world will
They could have
turn to
called him
Satoshi.
Yeah. that was very brilliant in terms of my 11-year-old brain, but
The world will turn to ash.
yeah,
Yikes.
I know.
This is our introduction to Ash, let's say.
Ura.
Ashura. And I think we need to start before his physical appearance, because, like, they're about to have a Tauros, like, knock down the supply.
Because they set the tone pretty early about the
Yeah.
destructive nature of this world.
Absolutely. A sudden wet splattering sound sounded from behind them. Turning instantly, they discovered a dead, bleeding Scyther still sliding toward them along the dirt ground from the momentum of being thrown, its blood acting as lubricant. It was shockingly mutilated. Somehow both of its own sharp, blade-like arms had been twisted around to fatally impale itself, while its serpent-like head hung from its neck by a thin string of red tendon, almost decapitated.
Lovely.
The mangled green corpse gradually came to a stop before their feet.
And we're off running.
Yep.
For a short moment, there was silence. Then one of the raiders shouted in anger, "My Scyther! Whoever did this, I'll kill them!" Kill him, of course. Sorry. They assume it's male, obviously.
Right.
From
Yeah,
behind
this
a
is pretty
burning
sexist.
building, a tall figure wrapped in a long black hooded cloak abruptly stepped out into sight. The cloak was flapping sinuously, slightly open in the hot wind, revealing a man's lean but muscular body,
Sinuous.
shrouded in darkness. His face was concealed in the dark, deep shadows of the hooded cowl, leaving only bright golden brown eyes visible. They seemed to glow in the dark, 2 points of flaring yellow light, which narrowed threateningly.
So, at the very beginning, we get the concept of this fanfic, which is, what
Yeah.
if all that cartoon violence was real violence?
Yeah.
Extremely real.
And I have to say, like, as corny as that opening is, I don't think this fanfic was truly, like, destroyed for me in the start until it was like, oh, that's supposed to be Ash? Like, really?
I just had to imagine as a new character, the Rurouni Kenshin recolor.
Yeah.
Tori, it's literally
the
like
character's not like Ash, you know, it's not, I don't
it's like
whatevs.
three paragraphs later that he gets to
I
say,
know.
"Pikachu, I
I
choose
know.
you."
I mean, I know, and that's when I realized that was the case.
Mm.
I'm saying it was very early on.
Also, in that passage is a reference to Ash's lean and muscular body.
Yeah.
Which is
Oh, and-
an actual theme. Like, pretty much everyone will notice his lean and muscular body, which is cool.
Yeah, he's also tall. They make a big point that
Now-
he's tall.
Now is the time for me to mention this. So in the FAQ, the author very neatly includes their own character notes, a full character list complete with descriptive statistics and everything, straight from their original notes. Part of the notes is where he drew the characters from, because almost every single character is a one-shot or repeating character from the anime, or based on a trainer from Red and Blue.
Very efficient.
But, so, Ash, aka Ashura, that's his name, Ashura. But body build, slender / muscular. I would just like to read off the body builds of the female characters for a moment.
Oh, no.
Misty, body build, slender / curvaceous. Valdera, body build, slender / curvaceous. Erica, body build, curvaceous. Duplica, body build, slender / curvaceous. Let me go down a bit to more female
Is
characters.
there a body type where they don't use the word curvaceous?
Yes, Chanel, body build, slender.
Wow.
Lorelai, body build, slender. And
Okay. So whenever they don't use the words slender or curvaceous.
Giselle, body build, curvaceous.
Chanel is a child, by the way.
Now, Aya, we've got athletic. I don't remember who that is. Oh, that's Koga's
Koga's
sister.
sister.
She gets to be athletic, but it was noticeable. Lara May, body build, curvaceous. Sabrina, body build, slender. So I'm just throwing that out there.
So I also just wonder, throw it out there. There's so many things to say. Obviously, there's a lot of misogyny. I just wonder what people think when they mean what they mean when they say curvaceous. I'm like, do you mean like what is that a body type or is it just like literal proportions? It's like a ratio of proportions. Like you could literally be any weight and still be curvaceous.
Did they say
right?
slender
It doesn't really
curvaceous in
say
there?
anything.
Slender / curvaceous.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's the thing.
So
So, the
that
slender
implies
and the
that
ratio
they're
is curvaceous.
Smaller and more curvaceous.
Yeah.
But then when it's just curvaceous, it's like, I can't keep saying that word. It's going to melt my brain. I'm done.
Here's my only argument, okay, for this.
Yeah, be
As the
the advocate, Tari.
angel's adversary or whatever, is if you think about anime, there are often very specific, exaggerated body types. And maybe if you classified those, like, for example, there's the extraordinarily impossibly buff guy, which I guess Bruno and
Yeah, that's how he's described, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, that's the shonen muscular man. Yeah.
And it's like, to some extent, their physical characteristics are defined by these exaggerations, like their massive muscles or their incredibly
waist.
huge chest or something. So maybe there you could find it in your heart to forgive this
Okay.
young person.
Well, it's an interesting question. Is like, how do you translate exaggerated art style to a entirely
Sure.
word medium?
Yeah, that is actually kind of
I
interesting.
don't know if it's a matter of, like, not forgiving them, per se. It's just, when you criticize it, it's like, yeah, you can forgive them, I think, for being ignorant. Like that's kind of the place where it's like a slight forgiveness for just not having understanding of the impact of those words and the misogyny of their writing. Because Taran's right, their reference point is the specific thing. Yeah.
But
Yeah, but I just say it in the context of, like Taran was saying, pointing out how attractive characters are is a extremely regular, consistent thing.
Yes.
Very.
Yeah.
So, like, for their reference point is, something, but then it's also, like, it's hard not to see this as real people when you read it, especially because they're trying to go in such a different direction from the source material. It just, I guess, points out the misogyny of the original body types.
Yeah.
Now, let's go back to who is actually the coolest, most attractive character, which is
I
Pikachu.
think so far we've made it one paragraph in.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, we should probably move
We've got 500 pages more to go.
I mean, just want to introduce the... we're established here, little black Pikachu. It's the same Pikachu. He's just all black now. He's also super powerful, and he gets to murder a whole bunch of folks with a lightning vortex.
And they refer to Pikachu with he pronouns and supposed to it, which they do in all Pokemon are it in the anime.
That's
What's
not all Pokemon.
I thought
Hashtag not all Pokemon. I'm sorry.
Wait, aren't they all it?
There's a
they
Nidoran, Nidorino.
But they still use it pronouns, even if they specify
notice.
gender.
do they?
Yes.
Even for the ones where the gender's established? Oh, I mean,
Yes.
you've watched a lot more of the anime than I have, so...
I mean, I'm almost 100% sure.
In turn of the Millennium Pokemon fanfiction, it was most common to refer to Pikachu as she. I'm not sure why exactly.
Well,
Fascinating.
female voice actress, I guess.
I guess.
Huh.
A cute little creature.
It's fascinating because I do think people gender Pikachu as like a boy Pokemon more often, but really, like, there's no indication of what Pikachu might be gendered. But it pronouns are the only pronouns used for Pokemon in the anime, as far as I can recall. But also, this author uses it pronouns for most Pokemon, but uses he pronouns for Pikachu and I think one other Pokemon that I can't specifically recall, which I thought was interesting.
That is interesting.
Just to be clear, for my purposes, Japanese don't have gendered pronouns. Is that correct?
There's things you could call gendered pronouns, but you don't use them in the same fundamental way as you do in English. Just because in English you need to have a subject of every sentence, and in Japanese you absolutely do not need to have a subject in every sentence, and so you just don't need to use the words that kind of serve that function unless... or you don't need to use them nearly as often, just structurally.
In Japanese, you would gender yourself with the way you speak, or you would be gendered by your superior who chooses what suffix to call you depending on how they perceive you.
Okay.
Well, there's kare, there's like kanojo, which get used like gendered pronouns in English.
But like if you're a man and if you have a woman subordinate, you call them kun and stuff.
Right.
Kind of helps you. That sort of context kind of gives translators an idea what the character is supposed to be read as.
Now, let's get back to the sex and violence. We have got stuck on things that we needed to get off our chests in terms of complaining. There may be more, but we also do want to talk about what happens in the story.
Yeah. So the sex and violence, obviously not points of complaint, right?
I mean, not
Just kidding.
intrinsically. But yeah, speaking of violence, Ash and Pikachu get to murder a whole bunch of like Pokemon League marauders. And we're also introduced to the concept of a master Pokemon.
So there's a name drop pretty early.
Yeah.
As well as the concept of a Pokemon dying.
And-
quite gruesomely.
Well, a lot of Pokemon die, but yeah, this Pokemon Master, it's like the Pokemon Master of Rock. Its name is Golemdor, right?
Well, no, you have Pokemon Masters and Master Pokemon.
Right.
Yeah,
it's
this
not
is
the
a master
Pokemon.
Pokemon.
It's the Master Pokemon of Rock. Pokemon Masters are something different.
Right.
You are correct.
Right. So how's the story go?
Okay, so Ash is tracked down by Misty. So in this fic, Misty is obviously aged, and Ash and Misty have had some sort of falling out in the past.
They're
which
both
is,
20 or something?
yes, either 20 or 21.
21, I think.
Yeah.
And it's left deliberately unclear exactly what the problem that they have with one another is for like at least most of the fanfic. Like you learn by the second chapter that they had a romance at one point and it fell apart somehow. You find out eventually what that is. Well, I'll explain that later, I suppose. Misty wants to recruit Ash. Ash fought for the Pokemon League, which in this fic is the Terra-bad, like, worst possible force. Like, everyone is incredibly sadistic.
They're like an empire or something?
Yeah, they're like Nazis,
Yeah.
basically.
But they're not
Yeah.
even very much like Nazis because all they really seem to do is like murder and rape and
Loot and
steal
pillage.
stuff.
Well,
Loot
yeah.
and pillage.
Yeah, they don't seem to have the same like fascist hierarchical structure. They seem
No.
to be more like looter, like pirates, like
Like
I don't
Russia
know.
during World War II, yeah.
There are these broad plans that the leader of the Pokemon League, who is Gary,
Lord Garrick.
who's called Lord Garrick, yes.
Which is hilarious.
And also, Misty has a different name.
It's
Mystaria.
Mystaria.
Yeah.
Mystaria.
Which sounds much more egregious to me than Ashura. I'm not sure why, given that Misty probably is short for something.
I don't think it is. I think it's just a water name.
Okay.
She wants to recruit him for the rebellion, is what it's called.
Right.
And it's kind of unclear what the geopolitics are. All the major cities were destroyed in something called the Dark Pokemon Wars.
Yeah.
Which
Except-
was launched by Giovanni,
Right.
and which, unfortunately, or fortunately, I'm not sure which, is never actually fully explained what happened.
Oh darn! Because I was really hoping it would be.
I was waiting for some sort of explanation for that.
I was waiting for a long time.
That was
Yeah.
like literally the only thing I was hoping. I only made it through
It's
chapter
probably
8. but-
best there wasn't an explanation.
That's probably
God,
true.
that's the only reason I kept reading.
But basically, the Dark Pokemon Wars are when Ash turns from being like a normal Pokemon master into the Pokemon Master of Shadow, which means he has power over all Shadow, which means he can cloak himself invisibly, he can fire bolts of shadowy electricity that kill on impact, all these things.
And this is way before the dark type
Yes.
Pokemon.
They
so
were
it's
trying to
kind of prophetic.
introduce it
Yeah.
as like the predecessor to
Although-
the shadow type.
although
like
they
a
also did
secondary
the,
type for Pokemon.
The other thing that makes the most sense after introducing dark type was also introducing light type along with that,
Right.
which
so
they don't do in the Pokemon franchise.
Well,
Yeah, I
fairy
thought that
might
too.
be sort
Yeah,
of
kinda.
lightish.
Kind of.
Like
Maybe
it's
they
more
didn't
normal.
want to too directly rip off this fan fiction. They're obviously inspired
Obviously.
by it.
Speaking of light, though, it turns out that Misty has a twin sister who was
I missed that episode, I think.
who left home and was presumed dead, or maybe she faked her death when she was
Yeah, she faked her
Yeah,
death.
She was a
ear-
kid.
like less than 10, because it turns out that Misty, actually in this fanfic, Misty is 12, or was 12 when she met Ash. Though
She
in
was 12.
Yeah.
canon,
In
it's
canon.
actually 10.
I thought Ash was
I looked
10
it up.
and Misty was 12. I
They're both
seriously.
10.
Oh, wow. I seriously thought
I
Misty
trust the
was
fan
10
fiction
and
author
12.
on this one.
All right.
In any case, Valdera, it turns out, Misty's twin, has also tracked Ashura down.
I just want to make a quick little aside. What's her name?
Valdera.
Valdera is blonde and Misty is redheaded. I think genetically it's impossible to have twins that's a blonde
Okay.
and one redhead.
So, no, they actually bring this up later in chapter 8, which I recently finished because I'm in chapter 9 right now. And that Valdera in that chapter is able to use Misty. Like, she has a genetic pattern identical to Misty's, and that becomes relevant.
They talk about it later. I just want to mention genetically,
Yeah.
I don't think that's possible.
But Misty, like, literally thinks, like, oh, but we're not genetically identical, so we're fraternal twins, not identical twins. So, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe, but also everyone else seems to realize that they look almost identical, except
Exactly
one
the
is
same.
blonde.
Yeah.
And
So-
I haven't mentioned that at one point Ash and Valdera were together after he was with Mystaria,
Which is not
for
really
years.
explained, right?
Which he never made a connection somehow. I also personally find it egregious that Misty, who has triplet sisters, is the one who gets the twin. Like, that seems, I don't know.
How
I don't
is
know
it-
why that annoys me.
There's
Why is that
familial
annoying?
propensity towards like multiple births, right?
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah.
trying to. That's
She
what I was
just
thinking
already
is-
got so many sisters. You have
I
so
know,
many
but
sisters to
it's-
work with.
I don't think those sisters were triplets, though. I think they were just their three
Yeah,
older
three older
sisters.
sisters, weren't they?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow.
But if they were triplets, I feel like it would make more sense because there's more of a propensity to have, yeah.
They talk about
like
that in
Mata
Gravity
said.
Falls, where it's genetically more likely for family to have twins.
Yeah.
She's the Pokemon Master of Light, and she is the only Pokemon Master of Light, which, like Shadow, seems to have just all sorts of random Deus Ex Machina abilities, like
Yeah, and-
creating things and teleporting.
I don't think we've mentioned that Pokemon masters in this world are.
Benders.
I actually wrote Waterbender at one point.
Yeah. They have super elemental powers, which is that ever explained? Because that's what I was waiting for the explanation
They
for.
throw out a comment by how far I read, where Ash is like, "Oh, back then we didn't like there weren't Pokemon
Yeah.
masters as we understand it." Like that's all within the past 5 years in the Dark Pokemon
Also,
Wars.
there's something that Duplica says, which is that she's part Pokemon,
Mm-hmm.
and that the other Pokemon Masters are not. So they somehow get their elemental powers despite not
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
spliced with Pokemon, even though that's possible.
Spoiler alert, I'll just explain that
Yeah.
real
Yeah.
quick,
Oh,
as
yeah.
much as it can be explained. So Ash at one point is recognized to be part Pokemon and can be trapped by the Pokeball-like force.
Field, yeah.
And
that's about
it
where
turns
I'm at.
out that he is the seventh master Pokemon. He himself somehow, because he is half Shadow. His father is actually
Mr.
an
Mime?
embodiment of Yikes.
Oh my god, it all makes so much sense.
That would have been better.
I knew it.
Just give me a second.
Well, his father is apparently an embodiment of Shadow, just like how Misty and Valdera's father, it turns out, at the very end, are the mother is the embodiment of light.
So Ashura's father was Shadow the Hedgehog.
I still like Mr. Mime better.
It explains so much, wouldn't it?
So there's actually something worse than this, which is that
Worse than Mr. Mime being Ash's father.
Yeah, it turns out that Duplica is Ash's sister.
What?
Which
Oh, see, I didn't get that far.
That's like very end stuff.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Which is messed up because they have all sorts of...
Yeah, there's
Flirty
some,
moments.
there's some
Yeah.
romantic tension there, which over the course of the fanfic drives Mystaria up a wall.
It's not quite Star Wars
um,
bad, but it's not great.
Have we explained Duplica's character?
Well, wait, we haven't even explained Master Pokemon. Like we said,
Okay.
Ash the
Sorry,
seventh
yes.
Master Pokemon. The Master Pokemon, like this Golem Door who gets murdered in short order in Chapter 1.
Golem
They're
is one
like,
of our favorite characters, I
We
think,
lost
so
that
far.
a little bit.
they're like uplifted, extra powerful extra powerful Pokemon.
They can
Like,
talk.
yeah, they can talk.
That are super big, which is actually really funny because in X and Y there's totem Pokemon on the different islands that are like big, extra powerful Pokemon that
This fanfic
Ash has
predicted
to
a
be.
lot.
Not
Yeah.
or Sun and Moon, sorry, not X and Y, Sun and Moon. But
Also, by the
Interesting.
way, humans can become master Pokemon. It's unclear
Apparently,
which.
because Ash did.
Right.
No, Ash was already a Pokemon.
Whatever.
Apparently, the League can have granted them power to
Canonize
become the
people?
master Pokemon, but it's never really explained.
Does that make Ash Pokemon Master Pokemon?
oh dear.
I would like to read my favorite sentence in this whole fanfic, which is in that chapter 1 when Misty first approaches Ash after he flat out murders Golem and he doesn't know who she is yet, but she says, "Only a true Pokemon Master could defeat one of the 8 Master Pokemons of the Pokemon League."
Okay, doke.
So anyway, long story short, Misty coerces Ash into joining her rebellion because he was against them, because he was working for the Pokemon League, but he has left for reasons.
He suddenly grew a conscience.
Yeah, he just suddenly decided that he should kill Gary. He thinks he kills Garrick, and then it turns out he didn't, or Garrick can recover himself because, oh, by the way, it turns out he's like part Mewtwo, which we'll get to.
It's Lord Garrick. Use his proper title.
I'm sorry.
Please don't.
And so,
You know, when I was a kid and I played the Pokemon games, I thought it was the funniest thing to name my rival Toilet. So when I started watching the Pokemon anime, I thought Gary's Toilet. So I'm gonna call him Lord Toilet if y'all don't mind.
So Misty blood bends Ashura into helping her. And
Good point.
They go and they meet up with the various other members of the rebellion on the way to Cerulean City, where there's some sort of ritual occurring that Garrick wants to clear out all the people around it. On the way there, we meet the major members of their team, I think Erica and Bruno, the former Elite Four. By the way, I'll point out that like the rebellion seems kind of similar to Pokemon Adventure Crew.
in Pokemon Adventure, Blaine was on the side of the Angels.
Right.
That's about the only difference. And also, of
Interesting.
course, Brock was one of the good, gym leaders in Pokemon Adventures.
Right.
And
He fakes his death, and it turns out he's a spy. For,
Right.
yeah, he was a double agent.
Honestly,
In
it
this
just,
In
they
this
called
fanfic.
it the Rebellion. It really reminded me of Star Wars. Like, I kind of felt like they were just, like, going with an ambiguous, like, rebellion against a fascist force that's never fully described.
It had
But-
that feel, which is why
Yeah.
I was very surprised later on when it turns out there's a separate nation state over in Fuchsia that is not part of that's who was employing Jesse and James as mercenaries.
Yeah.
I
Also
was
super
really
bizarre.
confused by that.
It's also super bizarre because one thing I don't think we addressed is that it seems like most of the technology, like the high tech they have, has been destroyed. Like their communications and stuff don't seem to exist anymore.
Also,
No one
no-
has
and
a
they're
cell
using
phone
like
now.
bows and arrows and
but-
not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just very bizarre. It seems like they've regressed technologically.
Well, that makes sense after a huge cataclysmic war.
Yes,
But it's also
but-
extremely spotty. Like, there's super high technology when the author wants there to be.
But also,
Exactly.
somebody should have had guns.
Pokeballs still
Well,
exist.
did those exist in the first place?
Yeah, they exist in the Pokemon anime. They get edited out in the American version, though.
Right.
Fair
like,
enough.
Like they're holding
Yes.
nothing, I think, or hot dogs.
By the way,
Or jelly donuts.
Yeah.
even though Team Rocket's being mercenary ninjas makes very little sense to me, I'll say that. So they meet Team Rocket on the way to Cerulean City, and they sort of join up with them. They're no longer enemies as
You
they
know
were
what
in
makes
the
less
Pokemon
sense?
anime.
Them being a couple.
Yeah.
Because James is so gay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Go on, sorry.
Well, I actually think they might be my favorite characters, like written in the fanfic. not because they're particularly funny or interesting, but their characterizations seem kind of spot on. That's all my aside about that. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, so the crew, you said it's Erica, who's the grass gym leader, Bruno, former Elite Four member. I feel like he gets the short end of the stick as a Pokemon master, because everyone else gets elemental bending powers, and he's supposed to be like a super-powered martial artist.
He is the fighting Pokemon
Yes.
master.
But the very
And
first thing he does is lose to Ash in a one-on-one
In a
fighting
fighting
challenge.
competition.
I hated. Can I just say I hated that?
Yeah.
Like it was
Yeah.
like Ash, you're such a little prick. Like why did you have to do that?
it
like,
was just supposed to be Ash can beat up all the boys and all the girls want him.
Yeah,
exactly.
Bruno warps
which is
immediately.
horrible. It made Ash such a hateable character. It was
Bruno
just like
warped so hard.
all about Ash's ego. I hated. I
In
just
this
hated it.
fiction, for some reason, everyone who has the elemental abilities to be Pokemon masters think that they're obliged to accept challenges in
Yeah,
this ring.
that really bothered me because when they introduced that concept, it's the let me find it in the fanfic.
Okay.
The wording that they use.
But in the meantime, can I just mention, I don't like how Pokemon masters, when they become masters, automatically gain colorful cloaks as a
Oh
thing.
yes.
Oh, yeah,
and that
formed
makes
out of
them
their elemental
recognizable.
Yeah, and they're just required to have them. What's
Well, but they can magic them away and mash them back on.
Why?
It's a sign that they're masters.
I'd rather have Taste Link. What's with that useless magical ability?
I know it's a little bit silly because it's also like, couldn't you just like make your own cloak that looked
Just have a cloak, or just
like
wear,
a master's cloak? And
or just like make a cloak, make it with the wrong color, so they like mistype you before they get in. Then you get the type advantage in the battle. Yeah.
possible. Possible.
Speaking of type advantage, light and shadow supposedly are opposed, and this never matters.
Yeah, that's in most animes where they have light and shadow. They often are weak and strong against each other. It's sort of
One thing
pointless.
I did appreciate about what this author did is it kind of made Valdera, the light type, the villain, whereas Ash was the shadow type and the good. So at least they went against
At least that was something.
that trope.
Yeah.
But it
Got it,
was
Mata?
also an obvious kind of reversal.
I got it. Ash and Bruno have a difference of opinion about torturing prisoners for information. Though, I'd like to say, Ash is like, oh, we can't torture them. I'd like to say, in defense of
How
Bruno,
noble.
the Pokemon League, again, are just mustache-twirling the worst people you could possibly imagine to an individual.
Horrible, violent rapists.
All of them.
Yeah.
So, I don't feel that bad about the concept.
No, it never seems to me that Ash any has any moral complications in this story. It's always
Yes.
like, you shouldn't torture, you shouldn't murder, you
Yeah.
shouldn't do this, whereas
But-
everyone else is making the hard choices.
Well,
It's not like they want to torture people. They
Well,
just
no.
are like, we have to do this.
Ash
Like,
makes the
hello.
hard. Ash's morality is just totally flexible. There's a point later on
Yeah.
in fanfic where he murders 3 Arcanine that are sent against him, and he's
Aw.
like, back in the day, I felt bad about I would have done anything to help any Pokemon, but you gotta do what you gotta do, including just
So Ash
killing a
is
bunch of Pokemon.
a humanist,
Ash
I guess.
kills a lot of things.
He kills
in
a
this
lot of
series.
A
Pokemon.
lot, a lot
and
of
people.
things.
Like, wait, how many Pokemon versus people? Because, he prevents that one, enemy from being tortured. just
Definitely
because
more
they're a human.
Pokemon because
Yeah.
people have 3 or 4 Pokemon on them.
Right.
I
I don't know. I'm just confused by Ash's
I
morality.
started counting, right, just out of curiosity, but then I stopped when he started to kill crowds of people.
Yeah.
Anyway, the Circle of Masters.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a difference of opinion. Bruno challenges him to a fight in the Circle of Masters, which is supposed to be a physical combatant and physical combat. The main rule of the match was if one were to walk outside the ring of stones and fire or was thrown out, then that one was the loser. La-da-da. What was extraordinary about the Circle of Masters, though, was that it wouldn't be Pokemon fighting, but the Masters themselves. However rare, such battles were allowed in the rules. What rule? What rules? What rules? The Pokemon League's rules?
Geneva Convention.
Why would you follow the Pokemon League's rules?
I know.
and then
it seems like we've descended into feudalism and/or chaos.
And
so-
shortly after that, as word got around the rebel camp of the duel, groups of villagers and trainers began gathering around the edges of the circle, ready to watch the oncoming battle. Although there was many of them, the crowd was silent as they knew the ritual importance of the challenge. This Pokemon Masters have existed for less than 5 years, and there seem to be about 20 of them. What is this common knowledge?
Okay, this brings me to a point, by the way. The fanfic introduces these prophecies, okay?
Oh yeah, there's some prophecies.
Almost like there's this historical background people have been vaguely aware of regarding the light and the shadow. And in the fanfic, Ace manages to install some poetry regarding the light and the shadow, which I don't recommend reading. Just avoid it.
Yeah.
That's all.
Well, anyway, I complain about the Pokemon Circle of Masters thing just as a general thing where it's like the general fuzziness of the setting bothered me regularly. Where like it's like, yeah, what's the geopolitical situation here? Where is the Pokemon League even based out of? It turns out later on there's another nation because Fuchsia seems to be independent, but the rebellion doesn't work with them, and I don't understand why. And there's just all those like little things where I don't understand the basic situation very well.
Yeah.
Or like what
Yes.
people know, I don't even
It seemed like
understand.
there's a lot of opportunity for world building that was
There
missed.
was, and some of the world building was kind of cool. Like the author was choosing a lot of ideas they thought were cool and running with them. It's just that it's the kind of thing where they clearly didn't plan it out beforehand. They were just kind of
I
running with
honestly
things.
feel fairly disappointed because I got halfway into chapter 9 of 12 of this fanfiction expecting it to be a lot shorter than it actually was. The chapters get very, very long towards the end.
Yeah.
That's
so
a very
really,
common fanfiction
despite
thing.
being halfway through chapter 9 of 12, I'm only barely past halfway through.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm a little disappointed because from what I've heard, all this stuff I've been waiting for, like an explanation of what the Pokemon Wars were and what happened and how the tech level decreased and how the world was divided and how cities were destroyed, never actually comes to fruition.
Yeah.
And I feel like if that had come to fruition, it would have been so good. Like, that was the
Yeah.
whole suspense. Like, I just wanted to know. And it seems like
I
the
wanted to know
author
too.
didn't pay attention to that, despite having set it up really well, you know?
I really like the idea that in the background of this setting, Giovanni was responsible for a horrible disaster, and like he's got to be dead now.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like, and that's all the background, and now the situation is different in a lot of different ways.
Was
Seems
Giovanni
like great
anybody?
ideas, right?
Was Giovanni anybody in this fanfic? Was he?
No.
He's just dead, I think.
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what Giovanni did, and what the ritual ends up trying to be, is releasing these forbidden Pokemon onto the world, which seem to be just shadow Pokemon. Like they seem to be whatever Ashura's type is, because at the very end of the fic they explain that the forbidden Pokemon exist because Light and Shadow are trying to come back into the world. At the very end of the fanfic, when they solve the crisis, the forbidden Pokemon will end up turning into like light Pokemon, which is great.
That's good.
The major subplot, though, of the fic, which I think probably deserves a little bit of mention, is that that Brock exists in this fic, and he. For people who know the anime, or don't know the anime rather, like Ash, Misty, and Brock are this team of 3, Ash's main character, and they travel all around the Pokemon world, being friends and catching Pokemon, etc. And as we mentioned, Brock was a spy for the Pokemon League.
Double agent.
Double agent, right. He pretended to be in the rebellion and then ended up faking his death for reasons that are unexplained in order to rejoin the Pokemon League. And I would say that his reasons are rough. Like, this is, for me, probably the harshest part of the fic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is
This was super devastating for Ash and Misty
there's a
to
lot of-
find out he was alive and then find out that he had never even been on their side.
There's a lot of dark Brock characterization at the end.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, in the middle.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't gotten all the way yet, but it was. Yeah.
So
it
that's
seems
probably
very,
good.
Like, he's very dark.
it's
as a character.
I think of it as the darkest part of this fic.
I
Is-
also. Oh, sorry. Go on.
I'm
Sorry.
sorry. You go ahead.
No, I was only gonna say that I found it really disappointing because Brock, as a character, seemed like, in the source material, like a male character whose primary function is to take care of his younger, like mostly girl siblings and like serve a non-masculine role and be maternal. Like, he cooks and he puts on aprons and he's very non-maternal. He's also has like darker complexion and like seems like to be the most like marginalized archetype of the characters, like the least normative. And to make him villainous in this felt very wrong to me. That's all.
I think the author tries to make him more sympathetic.
But that's
at the very
He's
end.
such a sweet guy in
he
the
throws
show.
out the opportunity to make him sympathetic. Though.
Definitely,
Like,
yeah.
go ahead and because you're right. That's kind of the toughest reading and like the hardest plot point to accept. I feel like.
I think it might be the most compelling part of the fic too, is trying to like figure out what happened and like see them come together and Ashura and Brock fight or Misty and Brock fight maybe. But yeah, so Brock is known by members of the Pokemon League, including Valdera, to be at this point in the story, a murderer and a rapist.
A serial killer, basically.
Yeah.
And like it's not even in the way that all of the Pokemon League members kind of are, but like it's really his thing. It's rough reading.
Yeah.
And then doing that to, like, basically, the only character in Pokemon you could potentially interpret as a gay person of color, according to the American reading of the show. I'm just saying.
Yeah. The explanation for this by the author is based on the Orange Islands arc of the Pokemon anime, where Brock leaves the group in order to work with Professor Ivy.
Yeah.
Ivy. Yeah, and she uses him as her young intern or whatever, and they have an affair or something.
In this.
Wait, in the anime?
No, in
no,
this.
in this,
this,
sorry.
okay.
In the anime, actually.
In the anime, sure, Amado.
In the anime, it's actually kind of interesting because he goes to Professor Ivy, then he comes back and they're like, "Hey, Brock, what happened?" He's like, "I don't want to talk about it," and they don't talk about
Oh,
it.
that's right.
So there's that.
Well, I can see why the author wanted to explore that space then.
Yeah, that's a good fan
Yeah,
fiction
but-
space because
Yeah.
like he's just like, I don't want to talk about
I
it.
feel like they could have done something more interesting and less
Well,
shitty.
So here's what happens is that Brock and Ivy have sex, and Ivy is expecting. And she actually does
Expecting what?
a child, a baby.
Ew. Oh, sorry. Go on.
And she sends Brock away on an errand right before the birth.
Like they mentioned that they find out too late to abort it, pretty much.
Right.
Oh, God. That's
Yeah.
a horrible way to...
To phrase it, it gets
Yeah,
worse.
it's horrible.
She sends Brock away, has the baby, and then drops it off at what is termed as like the worst orphanage in the Orange Islands. Brock goes to find the baby, and it is dead.
See, normally I would object to you calling a baby it, but since they call Pokemon it, I guess maybe in that context it's fine.
I apologize to babies. And so
It was like implied that Ivy sent it to the orphanage as a form of punishment or just disinterest in the baby.
right, for her it was an inconvenience, and
What's wrong with
And like she deliberately sought out the worst orphanage possible.
What?
right,
Yeah.
Deliberately decided to put her own child in a bad place. Okay.
right. So the baby dies. Brock
That's
gets super
horrible.
upset, and then I feel like the author tries to twist it a little bit at the end. In the lead up to the final confrontation between Ash and Brock and Misty, it's assumed, based on everything that's been written thus far, that Brock and Misty have some sort of terrible, like, had some sort of love affair or something where Brock is just devastated
It's
by...
like literally everyone's had love affair in this.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that Brock just hates Misty so much because they had a love triangle and she didn't love him, and that just made him evil. Mm-hmm. And then in the last chapter,
course.
or second to last maybe, they reveal this Ivy story, and then it is revealed that Brock, even though he said he killed Ivy in retribution, never actually did. That he's gone a little bit. I don't know what the word would be, but he's delusional,
Psychotic.
I guess. He's delusional about various things, including that he killed Ivy, like, in revenge. And instead, his... that's a complicated story, but it's Susie from the Pokemon series, who Brock also liked because he liked lots of girls in the series,
All of the girls.
is tracking him down in revenge for him hurting her, and then reveals that she actually killed Ivy because she actually loves Brock. It's a complicated little scenario.
That seems, we can't go into all the content, but that seems kind of representative of the types of motivations that villains and sometimes protagonists have in this. There's a lot of people being really upset about being spurned or someone they love being killed, and then that being like kind of their whole deal.
Yeah.
And I feel like the characters for whom that's not going on are the ones that it's a nice reprieve to read about. Like Erica doesn't really have a horse in that race. Duplica apparently she gets drawn into the major Duplica has.
I feel like go on.
Duplica has some unexplained, mysterious past things also. But
He manages actually to make Erica and Duplica also have these
Really?
tragic things. Yeah, for example, Erica apparently, because she came into her powers all of a sudden, because apparently 16-year-olds sort of grow into their powers at this time.
And because like Erica's the grass Pokemon master,
Right.
and also the quirk of no grass Pokemon in the series is pure grass.
Tangela is.
Well, in any case, she's part poison, so she ends up
Oh.
poisoning her fiance.
Oh,
Wow.
God. Seriously?
Seriously.
Meanwhile, Duplica was in on this plan of Brock to split up Ash and
Yeah.
Misty, which he did retroactively because for most of the story, it seems like he did it because he's in love with Misty or something, but then it turns out that it's because he's just gone a little bit loopy and needed someone after Ivy or something.
To be honest, I feel like the author introduced Duplica as it feels like she's just kind of like a fetish object, because every time she transforms her body, it's sexualized.
Did we mention she can transform her
Yeah,
body?
We did not.
I think we were gonna go back to that at one point. Duplica is apparently part Ditto, because she's the Ditto trainer and can transform her body into anything. Very frequently it's Pokemon, and the first time she does it, she's transforming into a Rapidash, and she's like, ride me, and
Yeah.
it's very sexual. Almost every time she does it, it's a weird and sexual, and she's frequently, when she transforms back, will transform, it will talk about her breasts and her lack of clothing, she'll wear very skimpy clothing. She's just a hypersexualized character.
By the way, I'll point out, there's a lot of sexual assault talk,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of, sexualization. But there's very little sex or sexuality.
In fact, one of the plot points that's set up early, when Misty kisses Ash by surprise when they first meet and does her bloodbending magic, and she's like, now you have to do what I say because
Yeah.
I poisoned you.
I poisoned you, I have my water in your bloodstream or whatever. And then it turns out, the only way that one could break that would be getting it on. And I'm
Yeah.
like, you've just written yourself how this plot point needs to resolve. That is not how it resolves. He gets cleansed of that in a completely different way because the author decided not to.
No.
You're right, it never comes to anything.
That's actually
which
a
is
good
fine.
point, because this is what made me think the author was a little bit younger, is it made me think the author was inexperienced sexually. They were in teenage years because they were experiencing those high hormone levels, but they just didn't really know.
Sorry, the author was 17, 18.
Yeah,
they weren't
so-
that old. Yeah.
Yeah, so
right.
maybe they were inexperienced sexually. Totally possible.
I'm realizing, we're not actually going linearly through the actual
I don't think we
plot.
can, though.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's actually that much that happens.
Well,
Introducing characters happens, but it's kind of a sprint towards nothing until the
Feels
end.
weird, yeah.
stuff happens. Like you said, at first they're trying to stop this league ritual, and they fail to stop it.
Right.
And so forbidden Pokemon are unleashed into the world again. Forbidden Pokemon, you said they're darkness type Pokemon. I think their portrayal is a little bit interesting. For one thing, there's never just one of them. It's always swarms of them. And they're very, very physical. It's what they do is they jump at you and they tear your arm off. I can't remember them ever being described as actually using elemental attacks.
And there's kind of talk the forbidden is kind of code for demon or
Yeah.
hellish or something.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they are drawn to elemental energies being used by Pokemon and Pokemon Masters. So it's if we're talking about things being foreshadowed, the physical special split It's kind of like
He's a genius.
I mean, there was always a physical special split in terms of like some types are physical and some types are special. So I guess never mind that was always there. And so it's just interesting that they go kind of like the zombie horde, except they're all more like killer rabbits than they are like zombies. That's what they're at.
Sabrina also features in this anime, but more for plot.
Sabrina
device.
is a plot device. Her reason for doing anything is prophecy related.
Right.
It's not great.
Does some weird mind games with Ashura later.
She does mind games with Ashura. She's also blamed for why Ash and Misty broke apart originally, which...
They just like hypnotize them to be apart, don't they?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
They change their memories to make them think that things are getting worse when they aren't.
Yes. Does it ever explain, by the way, that why their names have longer versions?
No, it's just... I feel like one of the things about these decisions is that usually they're made because the author thinks they're cool. And like that's the case in the FAQ. It's like, why the cloaks? Well, I think cloaks are cool.
Right.
Also,
After they fight Blaine, and Blaine uses like the double-bladed fire sword, just like Darth Maul. He's like, because I think that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, which was actually really funny.
Yeah.
Talking about how people used to think the original, like the episode 1, 2 weren't so corny, but then they kind of realized they were 1, 2, 3. Anyway, point being, also, is it ever explained that Pikachu becomes a shadow Pikachu? Is that
No.
ever explained?
No.
Never.
It's referred to as an evolution, though.
That's interesting.
Is it?
Yep.
Is
It
it
evolved
explained
into
how
the same
Ash is
Pikachu but different type?
Yeah.
Ash? Like,
Just black without any obvious stripes, which is kind of odd.
so strange. I was just, I was fascinated by the fanfiction. I was just like, how did all this come to be? And it seems like the author never explained it. I can't imagine writing something so different from the source material and never wanting to explain it. That's so far from my own personal mentality. But hey, to each their own.
It's kind of optimistic in a way. I mean, I kind of like for example, like at one point Ashura casts a spell, and the only reason that Ace had him like use words to cast the spell is because he says they say that they saw one episode of Slayers and liked the Dragon Slave spell.
Yeah, there's a lot of repeats of the phrase "darkness beyond twilight."
Oh. Well, going back to the plot, just because we should probably give the broad outlines at some point in this muddle. The unforbidden Pokemon are unleashed, and then the main action is that the characters kind of try to regroup with the rebellion. The rebellion stronghold gets crushed, and after that they're on the run with Misty's sisters who are crewing a ship.
Right.
And then they're kind of going around trying to beat the Pokemon masters that are at the like Elite Four members mostly.
Right.
That are maintaining focal points that this ritual required. And the idea, the prophecy, Sabrina tells them, whatever. Sabrina the Teenage Witch tells them that if they can defeat all of these masters holding the focal points, or if they all die or whatever,
And the dark,
then
gritty reboot of Sabrina the Teenage Witch that happened before the Netflix one, so more future seeing from the author.
Oh, good point.
Yeah.
Oh, and the ongoing subplot of this is that Ash is also a berserker. Like sometimes he will black
true.
out and try to kill everyone.
Somehow I missed that entirely when I was reading through it.
He has some
Didn't
he has
process it.
one
Yeah.
particular move where he destroys everything within a mile radius because sure he can do that. Like he starts to try to do that with the original ritual and the Cerulean ruins, and then he's stopped before he finishes it. But
Do we know what the goal of the League ritual is?
Well, the League is trying to open up gates to
Hell?
Hell,
Right.
Which is where the Pokemon,
Or the Forbidden Zone?
the
whatever we call it?
astral plane.
Okay.
And doesn't the
Apparently.
author even admit that it's a hell analog or something?
yeah,
He says it's
yeah,
hell.
he says
people
that, yeah.
use that phrase, even like demon Pokemon, to describe the forbidden Pokemon.
Yeah, yeah.
And so they're trying to open up
I feel like
portals
the author
for
admitted that in their notes.
what purpose? Because it's of the few things that are mentioned about the Dark Pokemon Wars. They mentioned that Giovanni opened these portals to try to control these as weapons.
See, that sounds interesting. Yeah.
But that's not what they do. That's not what the League is doing. They're just kind of unleashing them upon the world.
So actually, kind
So
of,
many interesting ideas. And so
kind
much
of like
information.
their reasoning, which is they say that the world has been so messed up since the Dark Pokemon worlds that they want to wipe it clean. So they've managed to erect like in this particular city, Indigo City, which is where the Pokemon League is like based, and all the Pokemon League like civilians or whatever live.
The peasants around the castle town, yeah.
Yeah, they will be protected, and everything else on Earth will be just well, not destroyed, but maybe just like killed if
yeah.
it's
Right.
like a living thing. I don't know why that's good in their opinion, but they seem to think it's better than whatever they got.
Most of the reason the world is a hellhole that's super crappy is them. So,
But their way of doing this is by opening all 4 gates, which unleash all 3 levels of forbidden Pokemon. I don't think we ever actually see the 2nd or 3rd levels of
we
forbidden.
do see level 2 Dark
Okay.
Pokemon. When they're on Cinnabar Island, it's covered with, what is it, like ice, I want to say Sandshrews?
Ice
That's
Sandshrews?
Oh, which they have.
Which they have in Alola, I know.
Yeah, in Alola.
I might just be thinking of Pokemon Sun and Moon when I say Ice Sandshrews.
I know,
It's
because
like,
it's so like Pokemon Sun and Moon, isn't it?
I missed that
Yeah,
entire
it's-
part
It
when I
might
went
have been
through.
black, actually.
yeah, this black ice. They're like made
right,
of ice.
right.
And the thing about level 2 Forbidden Pokemon is that you can't kill them. You break them apart, they just reform.
Oh, yeah.
That's it.
Oh.
What'd they do then?
Mostly run away. Sometimes drop them in huge crevices that they make. In terms of the action in this fanfic, there's a lot of fighting. Like, the action and the adventure is something the author is interested in. And it's kind of hit or miss on whether I was actually interested in any given fight.
Yeah.
I've got to say, in terms of Duplica, she is sexualized and her transformation back and forth is sometimes fetishized, like you said, Tori.
Yes.
But I appreciated her in combats just because she could do a variety of
yeah.
things. And one of the things I like is that she can turn into any Pokemon. And that includes
yeah.
legendaries. But she can't keep that up for that long. And so I liked it when she was like, okay, this is an occasion where I need to bust out a Zapdos.
Yeah.
And like, I turn into Zapdos.
That's the other thing I wanted to say. It's the same thing. Like, she has a great character mechanic.
Yeah.
And, like, she's super cool. I just wish she wasn't super fetishized in this, like, super weird way where even her transformations are.
Yeah.
But as a character, she's kind of awesome. Also, she owns her sexuality and she's like, what else?
And also, like, they had enough of a downside where it's like, if you stay too long in that Pokemon form, that's what your mind becomes. So that's like...
Is that a
there's-
thing? I did not remember that.
They talk about a little bit in Mount Moon where she becomes a Zubat to echolocate out of the...
Oh, yeah.
Also, it zaps her strength. Yeah, and they mentioned, like, she has a hard time talking in, you know, English, whatever
yeah.
language.
She-
It
she-
just feels
she
like
can
it's hard
do
to
it.
talk. It's harder to talk in whatever language. When
She
she's
can do it, but she falls back into like the Pokemon words. So she's like, "It's this way, Zubat,"
Right.
or whatever.
Yeah.
That was actually a super well explored character, right?
Yeah.
That whole thing.
But a lot of the time, there's a lot of fighting, and it's kind of hard to stay engaged with the amount of fighting that there is.
Honestly, I didn't really read this much as I did
boring.
just kind of skim each page.
Uh huh.
And what I did with every fight was like, okay, there's a fight. Who are the combats in this? And then paragraph. They're dead. Okay. So then it was just like, who's fighting? Okay, they're dead. Who's fighting? They're dead.
Some characters seem very unable to die, and it's definitely kind of a plot relevance thing.
Yeah, like once you saw the character name appear more than once in those situations, then you knew that they're not going to die.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think any actual like main characters die if they don't want to.
And even the villains, don't they kill Blaine and he just comes back at some point or something?
He doesn't actually.
No, Blaine doesn't.
Blaine's
but
wife
his-
comes.
Blaine's wife, yeah, Lara.
Laramie,
Yeah.
who's in the show and
One
seemed
episode.
nice.
Well, she seemed nice. Well, now she's evil and murderous and taking revenge for Blaine, by the way.
So at the very end, they meet up at the Indigo Plateau, where Lord Garrick, is trying to open the last portal. After
Gary's such a dick now.
so that's actually what they try to explain.
Okay.
Okay, they didn't explain Brock, but they explained Gary.
Well, they explained Brock with like 2 different origin stories. Is what
Yeah,
Howard
it
was saying.
wasn't a real explanation.
So first of all,
Mm-hmm.
Garrick lost to Ashura
Lord Garrick.
in this history. Lord Garrick, sorry.
Stop calling him a Lord Garrett.
So Gary lost to Ash, but then Ash decides to give up his championship and give it back to Gary, and then Gary's like, okay, I'm now the champion.
Because Ash wants to go wander the world instead of needing to be anchored to Indigo Plateau and go back to defend his title every year.
Or staying in one cave, just waiting for the new challenger to come in.
Standing at the top of a mountain.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it turns out that this is problematic for Gary because he finds out with the powers of being the league champion that he is actually a clone of Ash combined with
I missed that.
with the DNA of Mewtwo because Professor Oak, being a very knowledgeable man, has a huge Cthulian professor's interest in these prophecies and decides, well, just in case Ash dies, we need a substitute hero, and
We
I
need a
can
replacement
even
Ash.
improve him.
Because Oak knows that Ash is supposed to save shit and stuff. Is
Yes,
that what that is?
Yes,
Dang, now I really wish I did read to the end.
No, you didn't.
it's kind of shoehorned in the last 10th of the last chapter.
That's okay. I can make it through the last 100,000 words. I can do it.
And but yeah, Garrick doesn't love being a clone, it turns out, and he thinks that everything should be dead because of it.
I feel like that's a Metal
so
Gear
sad.
storyline.
I feel like that's a Blade Runner storyline.
But he fails,
I can see that, yeah.
by the way, because it turns out that Valdera and Misty are two halves of the same person
So
who can form fusion style into one person.
Wait, whoa. Back it up.
So it doesn't
Say
matter if
that
it's
again.
genetically impossible. but
Okay,
yeah.
so apparently
How?
Professor Oak came to the Wallflowers, or Misty's parents' family home, because he has discovered that Misty and Valdera are the spawn of this being of light, this incarnation of light.
Misty and Valdera being one person at this point.
It's no, they're separate people. It's unclear why they confuse. It's never explained, but
Dragon Ball fusion.
by the way, Valdera, I think, might be the only original character in this.
The author mentions it several times.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That they made a super huge point of only making one original human character. They didn't make original Pokemon characters.
I thought that was Depletia.
Duplica. No, she's from the anime.
Duplica's from the anime. She's the Ditto trainer.
I forgot about that. It was one episode, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
one episode.
she's pretty cool in the anime, I think.
Yeah, I liked her.
Anyway, so yeah, Valdera is actually kind of forgotten about for the middle of this fanfic for some reason. I feel like there was opportunities there, but it's almost like they forgot that Valdera existed. Valdera shows up at the end and she's super sad because something about the prophecy, and then it turns out that she's going to lose her individuality and fuse into Misty, and then Ash can have both Misty and Valdera, which was not actually a love triangle that seemed to matter in most of the fanfic.
No, it didn't seem like Ash actually wanted either of them.
Yeah.
Certainly not.
Or
Well,
they didn't want him. Valdera wanted him, Misty didn't. It doesn't matter.
they try to do the romantic tension, will they, won't they thing with Ash and Misty the whole time.
Yeah,
but
but
Valdera,
it seems like they were pretty broken up.
Ash only seems to have regrets over ever being involved with Valdera. Yes.
Ash and Misty actually, I don't remember if they got married or if they were just
They got married at
engaged.
16.
They got engaged.
They got
They're
engaged
engaged.
at 16.
okay.
I don't know if they ever got married, but anyway, that's
what I get for
also an
skimming.
important point that they've been through, essentially divorce at this point. I don't know.
So Miss
Go on.
Maldera, or whatever, shows up and shows up at the very end while Ashura is fighting Lord Garrick, and
Stop using these weird names.
is super strong now
Kinda have to, I
because she has the power of 2, or I don't know. She just sort of easily slaps Garrick aside, and then she and Ashura do this special move, and everything is healed.
Honestly, I'm not sure how I caught how they became fused.
Oh, they just hold hands.
Okay.
They do a dance,
They do the fusion
perfectly
dance.
executed.
Yeah.
So they were meant to be fused from birth? Is that what happened?
Fusion.
I feel like you were explaining this to me and I still got lost.
That's all. You
Okay.
got it.
No, I didn't get it, but okay.
They were meant to be one, and then they became one.
Okay.
for some
They're
reason.
one. All right.
As as people who actually read the whole thing, Dom and Taran, I need to know some other answers.
Please.
So one of the minor characters introduced is Lascelles, who is based on the last
Lass,
trainer from
yeah.
Red and Blue.
Fair enough.
She's mostly early on another person to think that Ash is sexy, and then she just tags along for a long time. She picks up this absurdly high-level, apparently Caterpie,
Oh, you
who's
don't,
like
you don't want to know this.
I want to know who's like her companion for a lot of the story, and like it saves the day multiple times just through having a really good string
She's
shot.
super cute, by the way. I want to say
There's
that was
a
like
reason.
one of the good
And
parts of the story. Is
and
that
eventually-
adorable Caterpie.
oh yeah, the Caterpie's great. Caterpie
Yeah.
MVP for sure.
That's like really like one of the light parts, you know.
I reached the point where Caterpie eventually evolves directly into a black Butterfree. So what's the deal with the Caterpie?
Forbidden Butterfree.
The deal is Ace probably didn't know what he was doing with the Butterfree.
Okay.
So the Butterfree is actually the 6th master Pokemon,
Okay.
Oh.
which is a Ditto.
What? How does a Caterpie
Wait for
evolve
it.
into it?
Wait for it. Which is Flint, Brock's father.
Wait.
What?
Now, you might be asking,
I'm sorry.
how is this relevant to anything?
It's not.
It wasn't.
No, you got it. It's not, it doesn't matter ever.
So I'm great at predictions. I didn't know that Caterpie was Brock's father, but I knew it wasn't relevant to the main plot line.
I think the most egregious part is that apparently Datorion can't be Flint for very long.
Well, who's Datorion? I'm sorry.
So Datorion is the Butterfree.
The
oh,
Master
the
Ditto.
Ditto Master.
Yeah.
The Master
Yeah.
Ditto.
It's a master Pokemon of Ditto.
How is this not related to Duplica somehow?
It's not.
Okay.
You got 2 Ditto
Oh, so
masters, and it doesn't. There's no.
how is it not related to Brock?
It's
Just
not
saying.
related to Brock either.
So
It just
what?
happens to be Brock's dad, who's somehow a Ditto master, even though there's never been any evidence in the source material that Brock's dad trained any Dittos. End of story.
But he's not a Ditto master in the same way Duplica is. He's a master Pokemon Ditto.
That's what
right?
Duplica is too.
Yes.
She's part Pokemon.
No, she's a Pokemon master
Master.
Ditto.
No, she's part Pokemon. They specify that she's part Pokemon. Not the same way that other Pokemon masters are. She's also part Pokemon.
She gets a cloak, right?
Yeah.
She's a
Yeah,
Pokemon
she's a
master
Pokemon
Ditto.
master, but she's also part Pokemon. I'm done. She might be a master Pokemon master like Ash is.
So
Just saying.
here's the sum total of what Torion / Flint does. Convinces the generals of the Pokemon League that they shouldn't be trying to take down the rebellion and instead should be working with the rebellion against the Pokemon Masters or Lord Garrick or whatever.
Because
this is
they're going to
after-
destroy the world?
It's because the shield that protecting the city fell, and it becomes obvious that Lord Garrick doesn't actually care about protecting the city.
Oh, okay.
That's what happens
Okay.
with
And
Datorion.
Flint. Okay. I'm not going to pry anymore. Are there any
Yeah.
other plot threads we really want to know how they work out?
You want to see how Brock ends up?
Oh, yeah. What happens with Brock?
Poor Brock.
So Brock, when he's confronted with the knowledge that he
Not
didn't
poor
actually
Brock, 'cause
kill
apparently he's bad in this.
Professor Ivy, he sort of triggers some sort of awakening. Oh, also that woman who was hunting him down, Susie, sacrifices her life for him. He sort of undergoes this change of heart, and he ends up grabbing the Dragon Master Lance and self-destructing and
Okay.
killing them.
Yeah, of course he had a noble sacrifice. Like, that was going to happen,
Yeah.
even though they passed a moral threshold with him with several of his scenes, where it wasn't even like kicking a puppy, it was like beating a baby seal to death with a puppy.
Or just
Yeah.
establishing that he's a rapist serial killer.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like, and a sadist and
Just
misogynist and
really a bad way to go at the character.
real asshole. Like,
I actually thought it was. I think the most furious I was with this fanfic is when the woman who he brutalized and raped
God.
still loved him and sacrificed her life to protect him. That happens, and it's
oh,
terrible.
yeah, you should be angry.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, that's really upsetting. I didn't read that far, but I will say it's also like super frustrating something I wanted to elaborate on what I was saying about Brock before is it's like it always felt in the anime like his like obsession with girls, like it's usually not too bad. Like he's flirting with them. It's he might be a little pressuring and like not the greatest, but he's not horrible. He's not what he is in this fan fiction. But it always felt like it was also compensating for like this kind of soft side that he had as well. That was way more, gender fluid or possibly sexually fluid, gay, I don't know, whatever.
I can see that read because it seems like he's performing it so heavily.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just, he always read like more like a gay character, but even if he's not, it doesn't matter because he's not very masculine, despite hitting on all these girls. And just to put him in this role, like, to take that, I don't know, that overcompensating and turn it into sexual assault and violence against women is just, it's horrible. I just feel
it wasn't fun to read.
The biggest mistake the author made.
Agreed. On a lighter note, something I liked that I think was probably my favorite part of the fanfic, and was probably my favorite part of the fanfic, like back when I read it, was the Mount Moon part. They take a glitch in the original Pokemon game, Missingno, and they make it into this terrifying,
horrible monster.
Right.
That was so good. That was so good.
I thought it was good.
Just like a scar on reality.
Yeah, it just it's this mist of death which haunts Mount Moon and kills pretty much anything that enters it.
Although really that should be off of the coast of Cinnabar Island.
So that is true. It should have been, but they said they relocated it there to Mount Moon. They dumped it there.
Right.
They say at the time it's the the master Pokemon of Shadow or of Darkness or whatever. But maybe there's more than one.
Maybe.
The author said they were inspired by another Pokemon fanfic that kind of dropped Missingno into the anime format as like a one-shot event thing.
Cool.
And yeah, it's a cool idea. I'd like to say when they're fleeing Missingno though, and Ash and Misty and Pikachu combine their powers to drive it off. It's basically a Care Bear stare is what they use against it.
Oh my god. Somehow that seems appropriate and I don't know why.
That's another thing.
Yeah, so here's the description. Like they were reading this, they hold hands, Misty's body begins to turn blue, Ash harnesses his shadow, his body begins to glow darkly.
Oh, yes.
Pikachu, add your power to yours, and Pikachu begins doing that. Now, Misty, Pikachu, release your powers into me. Now! When the powerful elemental energies streamed into him, he held Misty's arm up along with his own. Shadow repel, he shouted, desperately directing the immense power directly into the evil black mist in front of them. It shot forth in a bright, coursing beam of elemental energy, striking with the sound of an explosion. Abruptly, the mist seemed to scream and fall backward, dark blue sparks flying at the point of contact. Yeah, I mean, I was just picturing tummy symbols and everything.
That they made Missingno a real character. But also, yeah, I don't know if you mentioned before that the Pokemon Masters they glow when they use their elemental energy. Like either their eyes or their bodies glow.
They do magic,
So that's a part of it, yeah.
Also, Shadow Repel is one of many, many attacks that is made up for Ashura and Pikachu.
Ashura's Pikachu knows way more than four moves.
Yeah. That was another thing I was going to mention too. Is that it seems like in every single chapter the author has a new move for Shadow Pikachu.
At least one.
But it was super...
1 to 3.
But they describe all the different moves, and the descriptions are really good. And also,
They do have
it totally is understandable that Shadow Pikachu has multiple moves because it's like an elite Pokemon now. It's like totally beyond
Power level
right?
infinity.
Yeah, so it's just better than an average Pokemon, right?
They do say that. I've got to say, I was a little surprised the author did not make up more Pokemon, because there's only a couple new ones. There's Misty's...
Tried not
There's Misty's...
to.
He said in his notes, or they said, whatever, that they were reluctant to make up new human characters and would draw from the material for that. But they said they had no problem making up new Pokemon. It's just they didn't often do it. I mean, besides the
They
Shadow
said they
and
had
Light
no problem
Pikachu,
with
there's
that.
Starmos,
Yeah.
which is the Starmie evolution that Misty has.
Jason Starmos.
Jason Starmos.
From Full House.
I am a little upset that it was not called something along the lines of Starus. Or, I don't know, Starwee?
Whatever.
Starwee.
Starwee,
Maybe
I
not
like that.
Starwee.
Star
I just wanted to... Yeah, they...
Startachi. I don't know.
But they also mentioned when they created the new Pokemon that... Didn't they say something like... I didn't want to create a lot of new characters, but since it's a new Pokemon, it doesn't really count. But I feel like that was still kind of like a little bit like self-criticizing. Like they still didn't want to make up too many new Pokemon either. That was the impression I got.
They pretty much keep within the original 150.
Yeah.
I do like that Togepi makes a single guest appearance to guard someone's unconscious body, and someone asks, like, is that going to be okay? That thing looks pretty weak. And Misty's like, Togepi's fine. Togepi's way better than you think it is.
But I do want to go back to their structure of, like, creating new Pokemon attacks for Pikachu.
Okay.
Like, at the end of every chapter, they have new attacks for Pikachu. Sometimes they're repetitive, but a lot of times they're new. At the end of chapter 2... they have, like, this, a bunch of underscores, and they say Pokedex, and they say Shadow Pikachu, Type 1 Shadow, Type 2 Electricity. They do it at the end of every chapter. And then they'll say attacks. I'm just going to read my favorite attack that Pikachu has now. It says attack, Shadow Blade. Type Shadow / Electricity / Fighting. Pikachu shapeshifts into a long black katana sword. Incredibly sharp and powerful, thought to be an indestructible weapon.
Not even a blade of energy,
Oh,
specifically
fine.
a katana shape.
Yeah.
Yeah, katana sword.
Katana sword, yes.
Yeah, because there's other types of katanas that are not swords, obviously.
It's never destroyed, by the way, so...
There you go.
Yeah, my favorite is the Dark Lightning Slash. The Shadow version of the Lightning Slash, it must be performed subsequent to Pikachu's Shadow Blade. For all intents and purposes, this attack is also a Shadow Slice, capitalized. However, this area of effect and range is much more powerful. The type is Shadow / Electric / Fighting / Flying.
Flying.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, you have
True
Pokemon
beauty.
that have different types, but a move that has 4 different types.
There's now one move that has 2 types, kind of.
Oh.
But it's, kind of its thing.
When I was reading it, Thunder Shatter, which is an electricity move that can affect ground Pokemon, was kind of annoying to me. But then I thought about like the actual Pokemon anime and how the likely effectiveness of an attack seemed to be inverse to whether or not it was actually strong against the Pokemon it was hitting. Maybe that's only... Never mind. That's just an anime quibble.
This fanfic approaches type affinity the same way the anime does. Sometimes they mention that something is supposed to be strong against something else, and that's about it. It doesn't really matter.
Kind of just to show how strong a type is, because it's overcoming type affinity most of the time.
Basically.
Yeah. Also, they have a lot of invented shield type moves in this.
Well, they want to make the action more dynamic than dodge.
Well, it's the same thing, though.
It's the same thing.
Wait,
Mixes it up a little.
Is dodge a move in Pokemon? Is it-
No.
Should be, maybe.
They just say dodge a lot in the anime.
Yeah.
Like, Pikachu, dodge it.
Dodge it.
Pikachu would not have thought to do that
Good
without
job,
Ash
I know,
yelling at him.
I always think that too. Like, come on.
Maybe Pikachu just was not paying attention.
Pikachu only pays attention to commands, not to the actual battle. Like,
Yeah.
Pikachu plays a fun little game where it closes its eyes and, like, tries to figure out if they can summon that. Never mind.
So I hope you guys have accepted my case for this fanfic being awesome.
Well, usually,
Wait, what?
when we...
Sorry.
Taran's practicing their lawyering skills here.
Oh, great.
Usually when we wrap this up, we talk about things we did not like about the fanfic, and then end on a good note and talk about the things that we did like.
I think we already
I
talked a lot.
think we've already talked about the stuff that we did not like about
Yeah.
this fanfic, because we literally were unable to stop ourselves from ranting on about
I
things
know.
for the first, 20 minutes.
30 minutes.
30 minutes,
I do
great.
feel like
I'm sorry, Ace Sanchez, because let's end and talk about things that we did like about the fanfic.
I was just gonna say, to be fair to ourselves, we started out saying some things we liked about it.
We did. I'm going to come back
Yeah.
around and lay claim to the same thing I said before. The author was having fun writing, and it's hard to stay really mad at an author who has no pretensions, is just writing something that they're enjoying for fun, and seems to be pleasantly surprised that people like it. And, is like, oh, great. Well, if people like it, I'll keep writing it. And, the attitude is good. The vibe is good every time I read an author note from this guy. He seems very pleasant and good-natured about it. And it makes you want to like him and to feel good about the fanfic, despite stuff in the fanfic being angering to me.
Yeah, they were always very congenial in the author's notes.
Yeah.
Between the chapters. And I kind of like the idea of a Pokemon / Ninja Scroll reboot that this kind of turned out to be. It would have been fun if they went into Giovanni and the Dark Wars, but on the other hand, it's also kind of fun to have just established lore in the universe that you don't talk about. And then again, like if you were an author, you'd probably figure that out, even if you didn't write it in the fic, and maybe drop hints about some parts.
Dom, did the author mention Ninja Scroll in any of the notes you read?
Nothing I read, but
Then your instincts are excellent, because in the FAQ, it's first on the list of inspirations.
oh,
Ninja Scroll, Technoman, I have no idea what that is. Street Fighter, Slayers specifically for the incantations, Rurouni Kenshin and Dragon Ball Z for part 13, because he had not seen it until then. As well as fantasy / romance novels by Johanna Lindsay, The Wars of Light and Shadow by Janny Wirtz, The Wheel of Time and The Sword of Truth.
right, yeah.
I kind of feel like if this was based like specifically on Street Fighter, like more, I would have been more understanding of it. Like I could understand the gratuitous violence and misogyny a little bit better.
Well, I think your reboot was a little bit more focused on Street Fighter.
Was it?
It was a bit more Aikido based.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So anything else to praise from you two, Tori and Taran?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, what I mentioned before is like I admire the candidness of the author. I'm not going to be too hard on them considering how young they were. The youth shows, you know, and those elements, you know, I'm not gonna shy away from saying, yeah, it's really bad how much you were misogynistic and there was sexual assault and that sucks. But, you know, I get that's the media that was being fed at the time. I think the thing to praise is like that the author was really diving into something emotional for them in this, and like you see the theme of death recur throughout this, and that also recurs on multiple levels, like characters undergoing changes. Like Ash is a totally different person, Misty's a totally different person, and they've gone through dark elements of their lives that have reformed them and like changed their perspectives towards each other. I think it's a little dark sometimes and it's a little bit much, but I think the changes were explained very well. Like it would be very hard to see Ash becoming that person or Misty becoming that person or like any of these kids turning into these people, especially Brock. But the author made like good attempts to explain how this had happened to them by explaining the dark things in their lives, which I thought was good.
They did mention that like the anime version of the characters were there in this universe beforehand. And then there was a shift between that point and this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did a really good job trying to explore that. I feel like they could have explored the shift in the universe better, but like for the characters, yeah, it's like they did that.
Yeah, I think for me, like, there's a lot of playfulness in this. Like, they were trying to capture, they were trying to capture the spirit of the anime at some points, especially with the tension between Ash and Misty throughout the fanfic, at least in terms of like their very casual interactions. They're like very argumentative and
banter,
like to a point where it doesn't make any sense because it's like they've slipped back into this childishness, which I didn't really believe, but you know, I respect the attempt to make it Pokemon-esque. I also sort of I actually thought the pacing of the fic, even though it's way too long in my opinion, I thought it was relatively cinematic. Like,
yeah, it was.
Like, there wasn't too long of a pause between actual action, and there wasn't too much exposition all at once, which is kind of surprising to me. Like, I would have expected, like, right at the end. Like, I guess there is, right at the end, a bit too much exposition, but maybe that makes sense.
Do you think it fit a good 3-act structure?
I think individual chapters did. When I'm thinking about, for example, the chapter in the Rebel base, and I can kind of like see the shape of it in my mind where like they're introduced to the setting and there's some tensions with the leadership there, and then like people have some plans they're trying to execute, but then it all goes to hell from an external invasion of it, and then it's everyone trying to fight their way out with their lives.
Right.
And like that's a sequence that I remember clearly. And that was engaging. And I think there were other times like that.
I don't think we talked about that part before this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a thing that happened. Like you said, the missing no, element also. I don't think I saw that kind of structure as a whole story from what...
Yeah, I would agree.
Having not gotten as far as y'all, I can't necessarily speak to that, but I will say, like, yeah, I think you're right that individually, like, chapters did follow a pretty decent, like, not
some of
necessarily
them did.
3-act, but they definitely had some sort of exposition, and the character at the author had a lot of these transitions that they represented with, like, oppositional carrots. I thought it was interesting that every chapter started with like kind of like a almost dream sequence or like someone waking up, and then it shifted really quickly into some sort of rising action, and they reached their climax at a really appropriate time in every single chapter, and their climaxes were super good. Like as far as storytelling is concerned, each chapter was pretty self-contained, like you mentioned.
Yeah, once they get on their feet, like chapter 2 with first couple chapters, I don't know so much.
Yeah,
but yeah, I know.
remember this quite
I definitely know what you were saying. This was an extremely well-known and popular Pokemon fanfic back in the day, and I know it inspired a lot of people. You can see a lot of the fan art on the page. I don't think there's fanfics of this fanfic that I know of, but I think it probably inspired some people other than you, Taran, to write also.
Wait, fanfics of fanfics are a thing?
They sometimes are in the kind of, especially back in the day, the kind of more community-minded ones.
Yeah, Taran, what do you think this is?
We've looked at some like Evangelion fics where there were like side stories written by other authors. One of the Ranma stories we did had those too. Usually it was like communicating with the author and getting their permission in some way, which I guess might actually take it outside my working definition of fan fiction, come to think of it.
Just turns into a collaborative work, doesn't it?
Right, it does. So I guess I should say there's no spin-off side stories that I know of. But it was a big deal to the Pokemon fan base, and I think there's definitely something here that captured people's attention beyond descriptions of violence and threats of sexual assault, and that was the author like trying to do something really new and interesting with the characters and the setting.
You know, speaking of that, there's just one more thing that I want to say that I liked.
Yeah.
It's just, I really like Team Rocket. Like, Jesse James would be out there, like, my favorite characters. In fact, last Halloween, I dressed up as James for my Halloween costume. I like what they did with Team Rocket in this. Like, I don't really like how Meowth evolved into a Persian. That was kind of weird.
I was okay with Meowth evolving into a Persian, but his personality didn't come through.
No, it didn't come through at all, and that was really disappointing. There was no Meowth personality. But the characters were kind of on, like, the good guy's side, but still kind of mercenaries, and it was, like, very Team Rocket. Like, they found the same role for them, you know?
Yeah.
I can
thought
see
that
it.
was cute. And it was, like, as much as I think James is gay, and I don't think they'd ever be a couple, the, like, coupleness of them also makes sense when the author did it, because they did it as, like, Jesse being masculine and James being feminine, role reversal, which is kind of fun. So it's cute.
I was just gonna say I can appreciate Team Rocket being bounty hunters in the Ninja Scroll Pokemon universe.
Yeah, they're like ninjas too. It's just like,
They're surprisingly good at it too.
Where did they get this like ninja star throwing skills?
Yeah.
I guess in the last 5 years.
See, I liked it though because I think they're underrated. Like I always want to have them to have more props, you know.
But also just like James not being super gay is always a bit of a turnoff.
Yeah, well, he was like super. He still had all the effeminate mannerisms, but just stopped being gay. So
He's fighting
it's
Butch
like,
at one
whatever.
point, and Butch is like, "Are you still dressing like a woman?"
I
And he's
know,
like,
it
"Yeah, do
was
you want me to?" You know,
The-
while they're like throwing
Which is
ninja stars
exactly
at each
what I
other.
would do.
Yeah. So, you may have noticed this fan fiction is long. This fanfic was so long that the description on fanfiction.net just says hella
Oh,
instead of
man.
having a word count. Specifically, it is. If you want to jump in with any more, this fanfiction is so long jokes. Now is your opportunity.
I didn't know this was a thing. I'm gonna have to go back to the writer's room and come back.
This fan fiction is so long.
Yeah, how long is it?
When I printed it out, like the entirety, my parents found it, and I got into major trouble. But they only found the part in chapter 9 where two of the female characters are undressing and dressing in each other's clothes. And if they had found out that Pokemon died in it, I might not be here today.
That is a long fanfic.
You may
yeah.
also be dead.
Also, they talk about the color of pubic hair in that part. And it's really
Oh.
off-putting.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. Where they mention that. Is that the part where they mention that one of the characters might have pink pubic hair? I was like, never mind.
Well,
Moving
Taran,
on.
Sorry, I just
No, I
derailed
think-
everything.
I think you win
Yeah.
the joke competition there.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
In any case, the point
We have no
is,
more.
specifically, this fanfic clocks in at about 280,000 words, which is extremely long and the longest thing we've ever tried to read. And I'm giving you a break next week. Next week's fanfic is going to be Fall of the Republic by John Flynn. It's a Star Wars fanfic that is a treatment for, like, a proposal for Episode 3, back when only the first 3 movies, Episodes 4, 5, and 6 were out. It is 5,843 words. The shortest fanfic we have ever read.
Ever?
Nice.
No, because we've read short story fanfics.
This is shorter
Wait,
than
is
anything else.
no, yeah, that's very short.
5,800.
That's a good point.
Yes. So take a little break. You can find that fanfic through our link. It's bit.ly/rfrfall. This was episode 18 of Retro Fanfic Retrospective, Pokemon Master by Ace Sanchez. You can find a copy of it on fanfiction.net except for the very last chapter, but we are providing a link to the archived copy of the original website at bit.ly/rfrmaster.
Which is great because you get to see that website design also.
And the custom Pokemon cards.
Yes, very
For
good.
Darkness Pikachu.
By the way, the Ashura trainer card kills all your enemy Pokemon, period.
Oh god.
That sounds right.
Rest in peace, Ashura.
The intro song is The Weekly Fair off of the album Popey's Incredible Adventure by Komiku. The outro song is Run Against the Universe from the same album. You can find this album and other works by Komiku at loyaltyfreakmusic.com. You can find our website at retrofanficretrospective.podbean.com or bit.ly/retrofanfic, and we are retrofanfic on Twitter as well. If you have any questions, comments, or thoughts about the episode, send us an email at retrofanficretrospective@gmail.com, or even better, leave some kind of comments or reviews on Podbean or whatever service you use.
Or like tweet at us, I guess, also.
Yeah, you can now tweet at us.
Yeah.
It'll happen someday, I'm sure. One thing I have been doing on the Twitter feed is giving links to the authors of the fanfics we're reading, because several of them have still been active on the internet. And in those cases, I'm trying to point traffic their direction.
Cool.
So, like, if you want to find out what Joe Rovang of that Power Rangers fanfic is doing, or want to give some money to Fern Withy, who did the Star Wars fanfic and has a Patreon herself, like, go find it through Twitter.
Patreon. Is that a shadow patron or what?
It's an evolution of Eevee. Like, what type?
Yeah.
It's the money type.
Money type.
Ditto
Just
type.
like me out. Ditto type.
All right. I'm Amato.
I'm Torichu.
I'm Dom.
I was Taran.
Yes.
At one point.
We are just 4 non-demonic natural Earth life forms trying to be nice to each other.
Except for me.
Until next time, take care.
Hey.
Bye.
Bye.
So here's the main question for tonight.
Yes.
Ace Sanchez.
Yes.
Great fanfic writer name or the greatest fanfiction writer name?
Well, Ace
Ace
and Ash
Sanchez.
do seem really similar. Ash Ketchum, Ace Sanchez.
Well, it would explain
One
a
and the
lot
same.
if this fanfic was being written by Ash.
Yeah, it would.
Oh my god, it would. Like Ash being like, I'd be so cool as
Yeah.
an
Ash was
adult.
so cool.
Oh, in a zombie
all the
apocalypse.
girls would like me and they'd
Yeah.
all be so hot.
In
Beat
a
up all the
zombie
guys.
apocalypse, I would totally, like, just rock it,
Yeah.
and Pikachu would be an unstoppable katana.
13-year-old Ash totally wrote this
Makes this
fanfiction.
so much better.